All right, how we doing? Sam here with you. It's Wednesday, December 19th. So on a Wednesday, we're looking at crypto. It seems like a good time. We've had some sparks here in Bitcoin, relatively speaking here. So it seemed like a good day to come back, revisit the count here and see if we can make sense of what's happening right now. There's a few things to, there's a couple of challenging bits in here that make it interesting for the Elliott trader. Now, I'm just starting here on a daily, no, pardon me. I've got an 8-hour here just to emphasize this. We've shown this God knows how many times, right? So here's the February. Oh, I guess we hit it in February, March. We hit it our second time. From this 50 now has come and that target has been realized, and you could make a pretty strong case that part of the reason we're seeing this spark is because those targets have been realized, and you're seeing some profit taking. Now, it's not to the tick. It's within about $70 of the pivot here, which we had was 32.10. I think was the algo target, and I think we got down to 31.20s, something like that. It's inside $100. So now we get a little reaction. So what do we make of this? Well, there's a couple of different ways to get down here, but I think they all ultimately come to the same question. Is the low in, right? Obviously, we wanted to consider that, but is there a count that we can get to work down here to support the idea that the low is in? A little tricky, right? It's no surprise with Bitcoin, it's going to be tricky. So since we have this, let's see, I'm going to go down from my 8-hour. Let's go down to a 1-hour here. So here now we can see this. So here it is to the tick, right? But it had one more leg down to it. So I'm going to take that off since we've got that established. So as we look here, as I said earlier, there's a couple of different ways that we could get down here to the idea that we have a potential significant low here. So they all ultimately come back to whether or not this is our third. All right, so you can get here a couple of different ways. I'll show you both. This is my primary count, is that we've gone 1, 2, here's the 3, A, B, C into the 4. Now, can we finish here? Well, we can, but not without a bit of fib gymnastics here and it's creating some symmetry that it's enough to where you would pause and reconsider all the options. So let me zoom in on this and we can kind of dig in here and see if we can make some sense of it. So as we look at this, so here's coming off of this low. So clearly we've got an impulse. Now, all right, so we got a clean 5 impulsive wave coming off of a pivot here. What are the options? Well, it could be a 1 wave. It could also be an A wave, right? Or it could be finishing something. It could be a C wave. So out of all those scenarios, so what's the simplest thing? Simplest thing is we put in a low here, and we've got an impulse starting off, so we've got potentially a 1-2 going. Well, there's a few points of hesitation there. So first being, right, remember there's always an algo on the other side, so let's not forget that. So just working from the last dominant pivot high I have here, right, just right down to this little low here. So what have we run into? Right, no surprise. Here's the first reaction at the 50. We've got just a toe past the 618 to get into the golden zone, and we've had a little pushback. So we can't confirm a trend change until we break that 65. So here's the problem area. So we can all agree that this is a clean impulsive move off of a low. So let's acknowledge that. All right. So are we starting or ending something? Well, again, here's the evidence that we could just be in the midst of finishing something. So until we break this 65, you have to respect the longer term trend, which obviously has been down all year. So we have to respect the idea. So if this were going to hold as significant resistance here, we were going to head down or simply correct this 5-wave structure here. You start to look here and say, well, what are the other options here? So this is where it's a little problematic, both to finish down here as well as it keeps this other scenario here. If we look here, this is our last drive down. This is very hard to reconcile as anything other than, essentially it's just a zigzag. We've got a 5-3-5. So looking at that would create the possibility here that you might have something unusual, unusual maybe the wrong word, but you could have an A into an expanded flat that would finish this as a C. That's a possibility here because of the fact that we stall here at the golden zone. So you look there and go, boy, that symmetry would be kind of bizarre. So if you're thinking, if this is the 3, which I think there's a strong case that this is the 3, with this very clear ABC, so then it would become, could that be 1 ABC into the 2, or do we have 1, 2, 3 ABC? The symmetry would be somewhat ugly for that. So if I just kind of take this stuff off here, see what that would look like. Is this a possibility? So if we think here, we go 1, 2, 3 ABC into the 4 and then down for the 5. I can't say I love that symmetry. The 4 is just way disproportionately way too large. Even though it's a possibility here, it seems less likely. So if the idea that that's not a C and that we have something impulsive here, well, what's the other alternate? Well, it could be an A. So you look at that and you think, okay, well, if that's come here, if that's A, and then we'd have a B and then some sort of a C. Let's think about that. So if this is 5 waves into an A, and then we're going to get an A, B, C into that, and then we're going to go into another impulse here, something along those lines. Let's finish that. Okay, so what would that look like? It's certainly reasonable. Now we'd be breaking the 6-5 here, so this would be on a larger degree. So I'm pulling that off here. So would that make sense? If this is A, B, and we're going to go into some sort of a C, well, we could just use traditional, our typical wave relationships that we'd be looking for. So maybe bring this up, golden zone. There's a B here. So A, B, then we're going to finish with some sort of C. So you might look for a relationship between the length of the A on the assumption we've completed something here. And there's a pretty strong case for that on the assumption we've completed something there. Well, let's think about where that would put us. So if this is an A and this is a B, well, here's a reasonable target. Here would be 100%, so that's a contender here. So this could be much lower here. 1272. If it's not going to be the 100, 1272 would be your next place you'd look, and then you'd start putting some geometry together and say, well, maybe I've got the range is wrong here. Maybe it's something along these lines, right? You're trying to construct, and then you say, okay, well, where would that put me? Let's say that we'd had that A, B, C, something along those lines here. So let me pull this off here, not to confuse things. So A, B, C. All right, well, let's pull back out to that 8 hour. Where's that going to put us? Well, could that make sense? Well, I suppose the first thing you might look at is, well, if this were going to be an A, B, C, this would be correcting an impulse. So if this completed impulse here is being corrected, that means we likely have some sort of 1. So this more likely would be your 2. So you'd have, let's think about it here. So could we maintain? We could maintain it. So this could still be A, B. I think I'd go to my alternate count. So we'd have A, B. So we'd be finishing, so the B would be here. So I'm going to pull this off here. I'm just working through this on the fly. So I think then so I'm going to take this down a degree here so I can see if I can construct it so it makes sense. So if that goes sub-minuet. So then we have the possibility, would this make sense? If this is 1, and this is a count I'd been considering for some time, 2, this would have to be 3, 4, and 5. So let's get that. Let me get that in white, and we'll go up a degree. Let's go. Oh, we'll go here. Okay. So could that work? So if this is the B here, so I'm working as this is our X wave here. So if we go A, B, 1, 2. Well, let's think about that 3. So if this were going to go 1, and this were the 2. Well, here's 2, 6, 1, 8. That's an extreme for a 3, and we don't go too far beyond it, but that's not out of the realm of possibility. 1, 2, 3 is in. We'd be putting in the 4 here for that before we went down to finish it. So in that symmetry, we'd be looking like this. So 1, whether that could be here. Yeah, I think it's here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So can we finish that way? What would that look like? Oh, that's not bad. So until we've got to allow for this possibility here. It's too soon to say, the low is in. We don't have enough information to make that call or confirm it. Something's happened, right? We've got a clean impulse, first impulse we've had in some time. So very good sign here for bulls, but we can't eliminate. It's way too soon to say, oh, the big low is in, and we're off we go. We still have very real possibility here because the depth of this is so far. So even if we looked here, think about this. If this is our 2, right now I don't know that it is. Look where that would put us here. That's assuming we go A, B, C into the 1, 2, 7, 2, the length of the A projected from my proposed B, which is hypothetical, right? I don't have those pivots. But boy, would that sure would fit, wouldn't it? Right. So if 1, 2, 3, 4 to the 38, what are we looking for if we get one more turn down? Right. This was previously drawn, right? So this has been sitting here, so that would put us at 2,200, right? That was a secondary target in prior counts that we'd been through based off of this idea, 3, 4 coming down for the 5. Now that puts us at 2,200. Boy, it's so something's going to have to happen substantially here. This is going to need a lot more traction to eliminate that possible count. If anything, I would say that's the more probable count. Based on what I'm seeing here, much as I want to lean into that, you guys, I've mentioned it several times. I started buying at 3,200. Started adding. So I like what's happened so far. Now it's not enough to be jumping up and down. Oh man, I caught the low. Well, right, it wasn't rocket science. It was just the big algo target. Right? It's been there since February, March. So not blowing my own horn there. It was pretty straightforward place to be a buyer. But is that the low? Is really the question here, and the point of going through all of this. Well, if it is, we're going to need to see. Here's what we're going to have to see this way. So let me take it down. Let me go back to the hourly. How do we know? When will we know? Because AB looks a hell of a lot like 1, 2, right? They're indistinguishable. We don't know, and we won't know. No way to confirm this as to whether or not that could go higher too. Remember, right? So this could all go here. So if this is going to go A, B, or 1, 2, we've got to have the impulse to follow, right? That goes without saying. Well, I take that, pardon me. If it's a C, we could have an ending diagonal. So to some degree, that will be a tell. Do we get an impulse or do we get a diagonal? All right, so that's one way that will be, at the very least, a tell as to what we're likely to have here. So there's the first requirement to establish this low. I've got to have an impulse, a correction, followed by an impulse. That reduces the probability that I've got A, B. Well, it doesn't eliminate it, but it reduces it. So let me rephrase that. If we get a diagonal, it eliminates the possibility that it's 1, 2, 3. If we get an impulse, we still have the possibility that it could be a C. But until we get this confirmed, until we get this up for a 5, now it starts to look stronger as a 1 wave. Now again, still could be just a larger, right? You got to keep this in mind, right? This is the fractal nature of Elliot, right? Still could just be a larger ABC. Could just be the whole, well, this would have to all be up here. So think, because we've come from so far, right? That is not out of the question, right? So if we went up here, let's say we bumped up here and you go, shit, man, look at that. What a beautiful one. That would certainly be looking a lot better. We'd be up here at 4,900. We're still not back to where we broke from, back to the 6s. So let's think about that. Or could that work? Right, so this is a worthwhile experience. So can you put together a roadmap here? And where would that put us? So I'm going to stop that there. So if that's coming up here, so could that work? Right, if this were the A, so say we ran into the A at the 50, common location for the A, well, let's put the whole thing together. So if we came back down from this low and we got a full impulse where here's our zone between the 50 and the 618, A, B, now what do we get here? Look where the algo target is. Literally on top. Now, granted, I'm drawing here hypothetically here, so let's not put too much stock into that, but kind of interesting, right? So then we pull back out on that. Let's go back to that 8 hour and say, would that work? Is that possible? Can we eliminate any of these possibilities? Sadly, we can't. Now, if we're pushing a 618 for the length of a 4, we're reducing those probabilities, but we're not eliminating. We're not eliminating 1, 2. So let's see if we can put it together. So I suppose you got another possibility that you could have. This could be 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. There's a lot of scenarios here that are going to be required for Bitcoin to get through, to eliminate all of the scenarios that allow for this to be heading back down again. Right? It's just not a clean finish. Is there a finish there? Yeah, and I'm going to get there. I know. I just want to take you through this before we start, shopping for Lambos again. Let's be careful about this, right? We're not there yet. So it's possible that the low is in, right? So there's good evidence to support that idea, but we can't eliminate these scenarios here. So this could potentially look like this. So you'd have 1, 2, 3. Could that be the 4 down for the 5? Well, let's put the whole thing together. Right, down for the 5. Could we get that? Right, that puts us at that same spot, right? Because whether we're pivoting at the 50 or the 618, the target doesn't move. We're still at 2200, right? So let's not the craziest thing, but the size of the 4 relative to the 2, right? Reducing probability here, right? I would love to. That's a high class problem I'd love to have from a buy at 3200. If I'm wondering what to do here if we get to 5300. But you can't eliminate it. So with point of caution here. Now, that's me being particularly cautious given how many times we thought, oh, the low could be in, the low could be in. Right? Anyone who follows me knows I'm a long-term uber bull. Uber bull. Can't be more bullish long-term, 3 to 5 years. Couldn't be more bullish. But how are we going to get there? Right, so all of this still possible here. So if we did that, wouldn't change where I think it's going 3 to 5 years. Right, just be a better opportunity to be a buyer down here. So so all of those with all of that cautionary analysis here, until we break, you got to keep going. Until we break this. So really, what do we need? We need to get back up here to 6,600 to really, really confirm that we've got a new trend underway. So this would have to be 1, 2. Well, here it is right there. So look at it this. So this would have to be 1, 2. There's your negative 100. So this would have to be on the larger degree. We'd have to be playing it. Come here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, right. Now we got a whole new trend. And still, what would that put us? So to where you'd be like, holy shit, look at Bitcoin. We'd be still back to 8,700. Right, and if we got that, what's next? Right, we're coming back to 50% of it. Right, so there's a long way to go back to 20K. Long way to go. Lots of opportunity along the way. Right, it will not be easy. That's one thing we can count on. Right, so particularly as we go into 2019, on the assumption if professional money's coming in, right, that's not going to make your life easier. All right, their job is to take your money. So saddle up, right? Be ready for that. So you have to, right? So think about it, right? So they still want in. You don't think they would like to be buying as low as they possibly can? They're not in yet, right? That we can track. Right? Just cautionary, right? So just again. No Lambo shopping just yet. All right, so let's see about a count that would absorb this as a possible low. So let me come over here. All right, so I'm going to blow this up here. So because I'm running long here, I was going to work you through it. But here, so we'll just go right to it. So here's the problem with this count. Here, the problem's the wrong word. Here's the challenge of this count. This is a zigzag. No way around it. That's a 535. So by process of elimination, it's a 535 followed by a giant impulse. Okay, so what are the options for us? Well, if we're going to finish, if this is a low down here, I can get 5 in my A, 3 in my B, and 5 in my C. I can get that no problem. I got all that. But what does that mean? If we're finishing with an ABC, we're finishing a diagonal. So you got to work backwards. So if we are finishing, right? If this is going to be our good low down here, well, we got to work backwards. So if that's ABC, then this has to be the 4. Right, you'll see where I'm going with this. So this has to be the 4. So if that's the 4 and it's a diagonal, I have to overlap my 1. It's not an option. It must. Well, here's the only place that makes sense, and it's a very slight overlap, but there it is. This is the only way I can get this count to work to accommodate this as my hard low, which is why I'm a little suspicious of it. So if this is the 1 here, right, and we'll back up into that, it has to be actually. There's no other alternative, right? I have to have the 1, I have to have the 4 overlap the 1. This is the only thing that would make sense. If this is the 4, right? Remember, we're assuming this is the 4 because we're finishing with an ABC of a diagonal or this nice clear zigzag. So this must be the 4, meaning I've got to have a 1. There's lots of places where you go, oh, would that be much more convenient for my 1? Doesn't work. Got to overlap. That's the only spot. Now, can I make that work? Well, right off the bat, you can see the challenge here. Now, I'm on a 3-hour, so we have to allow for a skinny 2. So let's back up into it and see if we can put the thing together. So that means that if this is the 4, if this ABC is the 4, and we'd looked at a couple different scenarios, there's possibility with A, B, C, D, E. We had a triangle option here. I think. I prefer this as an ABC because I've got to get, if this is my 1 and I'm in a diagonal, I've got to get an ABC into that. Well, I can get that. So you got a couple of little squirrely spots here, but I can get the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 coming down, meaning I can get the A wave. Here's my A. I got to go A, B, C into my B, and then I got to go into that 5 down here for my 5. So there's my 1 wave. So A, B, C into the B, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 gives me my 5 as my 1, which gives me the qualification that I need for my 4. So what's the hesitation on this count? Well, that's not a pretty looking 2. Right, mighty shallow. So if you think about it, so if that's completed as the 1, we're only making the 23. It's not that we never see it. It's just it's lower probability. It happens, just happens very infrequently. Even the 38 is infrequent, right? So we got to allow for the 2. So is that a force fit? Well, if you want to, if you're trading off of the idea that the low is in, that's the only way to get. Well, I shouldn't say that. There'll be 5 alternate counts underneath this that I posted. Half of them will come from members. They catch me all the time, or give me another way to look at it, which kind of makes it fun, right? So that's the. You love it or hate it of Elliott Wave. The very sharp people can come up with different outcomes here. I've had multiple exchanges with both members and senseis as to where we are. Again, it's solving the puzzle, right? No, we're not going to know until we get enough confirmation. There's still 5 different ways this could go. Right? Welcome to trading. Right? So you say, oh, come on, man, it's either going to go up or it's going to go down. Well. Yeah, you want to be ultra simple. Yeah, but in terms of how the Elliott count could go, a lot of scenarios here. This is what I think it plays best. Now, note here, if we take the length of that 1, we're getting the very shallow 2 here. We blew right through the first. We got the -618. So there's some technical confluence to it down here. So with that, oh shit, I don't want that. With that off here. So let's take that off. So you have to have, so it creates the symmetry is definitely a little ugly. So you end up with this, which ain't pretty. So if I pull that off, let's see if I can get that somewhere where you can see it. So if I pull that off, that's what we get. Let's see if I pull it up. That's what we're allowing for. So just looking at it, you'd go, oh, come on, man, that symmetry is horrible. Well, yeah, it is, right? So which takes you back to, are we done here? Are we? Or are we just squeezing something in here just to accommodate the rule set? Well, at times, that's what Elliott's requiring you to do. I would propose to you that doing that will keep you out of trouble more often than not. But it creates enough hesitation down here where you go, is the low in? is that low in? What else could be going on here? Now, you might note here, you might just eyeball this and you think, oh, wait a minute, third's not the longest. Well, you're absolutely right. Third is not the longest, but is also not the shortest, which is the only requirement that we need here. So you can see here would be, I had this wicked off previously, right? So we looked at this in the past, but with a different scenario. If this is 100% the length of the third, right? So here we know 5 is shorter than 3, right? So here would be 100%. So we have this red line here, is this disqualifies that count, or pardon me, this yellow dash line here. So this is where that count would have been invalidated, as 5 would have been longer than 3. We don't get that. So we have the extension in the 1, an ugly kind of bizarre 3, ABC, pretty looking 4, and then we finish with that zigzag. If that's the low. So as to where we end up when we're all done and we get confirmation, it's going to be very interesting. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not a trade setting up here. Absolutely, there's a trade setting up here. So we've got a nice clean 5-wave impulse. Let me go down to an hourly. So so just pulling from swing low to swing high, get it right on there. This high, well, we know we ran into a 618 here. So here we've got a nice fat zone here, so we can note, we can split the difference here. So I'll use this pivot. I think I was looking at this with a member. So here's some prior resistance. So let's use that as our entry point. If this is a 1 wave, well, we'd be looking for the 1618. So we know that shorthand of that is going to be very close to the negative 100. I show you that all the time. If I can get it on our screen. So there it is. Okay, so if we're a buyer here off of this pivot, so the idea would be, I've got an impulse. I'm looking to be a buyer between the 50 and the 618. I'm at the prior 3-4. Right, so I've got a swing pivot here for some geometry, some structure here that might support the idea, the possibility that maybe I've got a 1-2, maybe I've got an AB and I'm going into the C. 1618, not radically unusual for a C wave. It's a bit heavy, but it's not radical. So there's definitely a trade here. That's, well, you don't even need to give it that much. So put your stop under the under the 65. Give it a little cushion based on your risk tolerance here. So, but there's 13 point, almost 14 to 1 if I get this right on the target. So almost 14 to 1, right? Absolutely valid trade. Nothing wrong with that. So do we come down in 3, right? So do we get this? If we come down for that very tradable. All right, so reasonable amount of risk. So you're risking from 34.80 to less 34.03. So you get $80 of risk to try and get up here to 47.26. Very tradable. That's one to be notified here. I would want to know when we get to that 50. I'd want an alert going off. Right, note here what we've got. Right, we've got additional structure here. Here was that structure that created the possibility for this to finish as a diagonal. So we know this was important to the market. That's at the 38. Although since we're looking for a 50, I'd wait. I'd want to see it in that prime zone, right? Because I'm a little, if I'm going to try and create the best possible outcome with the lowest possible risk for the so consider the alternate, right? If this is an A. Well, where are we looking for the B? Right, same idea. You could partial here, secondary here. Do we get a 1? Are we going to get 100%? Right, length of the A projected from the B. We go to 100. Either way, this is a very tradable zone here, because what looks less likely is that, not that it's not possible that we're just going to do that. Now you say, well, what if we had an A, B, C? So we had an expanded flat, something like that. Well, shit, man. It's possible. But is it probable? I would take this trade. It's a reasonable place to be adding, right? So if the low is in down here, emphasis, if the low is in 1, 2, or AB, either way, that's very tradable, right? So I'd be looking for that. So shit, there's a half an hour. That's probably long enough. So you got multiple scenarios here. I've been through all of the possible alternates that could be here, but that doesn't mean that this isn't tradable. This is very tradable. Whether it ends up being an ABC or a 1-2 or and something else, or maybe we get an ABC of another X wave. We don't know, right? So what we do know is that this impulse is likely to be corrected in 3, regardless of where we are. So then you think, well, wait a minute. What about if this was an AB and we were finishing a C here? Well, then we're looking for a 1 wave, right? So then you would know, because if you got, well, you'd likely be stopped out here, but there's going to be algo participation here. We know that a dominant swing to a pivot, there'll be algo participation here. We don't have to wonder about that. Doesn't mean they can't get through it. So if you had something like that, so if you had a 1-2 and then you started to head down again, right? Then we know, oh, this was A, B, C, 1, 2, we're going much lower. I think that's less likely. Right? So that would be coming down in for the 3, the 4, and the 5, and now we're back down to 2,200. And as I showed you, I don't like that because the A expanded B wave into the C. The symmetry is ugly, right? But not that this count isn't ugly. I just think that's less likely. So this is a trade, recognizing that we put a stop on it, right? Just regardless of what we get here. So if we can't get to a new high here, then that's a bit of a tell. If that starts to roll over, then you're starting to rethink. Oh, wait a minute. Well, of course, could be that, right? You got all sorts of scenarios here, right? There is no absolute, must be the count, right? It's always trying to adapt to what the market reveals, right? Eventually, we'll have it all figured out. But right now, it's just playing with probabilities. What's the most probable path? Well, what can we say with certainty? I've got an impulse. I'm anticipating a corrective move off of that. If it ends up that this was the correction, that we get that this ends up being A expanded into a C, and we're going to go 1, 2, 3. Well, shit, man. So you took a stop, right? So what do? You say, thank you. Thank you, stop, for doing your job, for preventing me from doing something stupid, which is trading without a stop and letting that thing go down. Right? You know what I feel on that. All right, guys. So there you go. That's long enough here. All right, I got 1 or 2 more today, but very interesting. All right, if you got an alternate, post it up. I'd be curious to see it. All right, guys, back to you later.